like sucking, but I ain't gay.
Legit bad podcast.
Fuck those honkies.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
He really knows how to suck a wiener.
Hey, welcome back to Legit Bat. I'm Joe. Ben's here. Jen is also here.
I am. I almost wasn't. I don't feel awesome, and I probably won't say a lot, but I want to hear what you guys have to say.
She feels like a huge turd.
Mega doo-doo.
I
Mega
look like one too
doo-doo.
now that I can see my face on the camera. I look sick. Cool.
Thanks, Ben, for joining. I didn't even hear from you at all today, so I wasn't even sure, but you were here before me, so that's cool.
There was. You're welcome.
Drink that
Cheers.
coffee. Yeah, you look like you're about to go to bed, too. Cool.
Yep.
Well, we have...
But it is decaf, so.
Oh, okay.
Good for you.
We have Andy from the Deep Share back on again. It's been a while, dude. Good to see you. And kind of stepping in, co-hosting and co-guesting. Barb, she was supposed to be here last week, but had technical difficulties.
Hey, guys.
Good to see you again. It's been
Thank you for having me on.
guys.
longer, I think. Andy, let's start. Do you want to plug anything off the top here or just get right into what you want to talk about?
Sure, man. Well, first of all, yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for having me on. This is always a good time, and it's good to see you all. Yeah, you can go to thedeepshare.com. That's where my website is. The podcast is on all the regular podcasting apps. It's on YouTube and Odyssey. I've got a killer Telegram that's getting more and more interesting and popular. We're gaining members. It's for the Box Saga in particular. Box Saga English on Telegram. Yeah, those are pretty much the plugs.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And Barb, you said you were not creating content anymore. So if anybody remembers the last time she was on, she's a internet comedian, TikTok star.
I do TikToks, but they don't do as well as they used to. But I still rile people up on TikTok and stuff. So I guess I create content. It's just not as good as it used to be.
Oh, well, you're slipping. Well, you also got hit by a fucking bus. How's that going?
I did. So I'm okay. I have my scar and I feel my little chain of metal. Well, I don't really feel it, but yeah. My arm, I got my cast off, a little deformed, but I'm alive. So, you know, it could have been worse.
You should tattoo over that just so you can always remember.
Can you tattoo over
I've
scar
gotten-
tissue?
I've gotten some ideas. Yeah, in a few years. We'll get to that.
Here you go.
All right, Andy, let's do this. So when we first booked Andy, he was talking about, what was it, the Nephilim and Nephilim? And I know you're into the wordplay stuff, and like you were talking about the Box Saga. So start it off. What's been on your mind with that? If you can find.
Well, yeah, it's definitely been a long time since I've been on here talking about that. I think I did talk a little bit about Box Saga when I was on here long time ago, and it was kind of like I was just getting into it for the most part, so my mind was blown, you know. But since then, I've just kind of taken away a number of key points from the saga, and I've tried to see if I can apply it to other areas of history. Basically, the most drastic thing that the Box Saga did for me was it removed ancient aliens. So that was something that I was really into for a lot of years. And I was never full tilt. You know, a lot of times I would watch Ancient Aliens and where they would consider that extraterrestrials were like the ultimate answer. Sometimes I'd be like, I wonder if this was like psychedelics and humans just getting advanced on their own or something. You know, I wasn't fully blown into the extraterrestrial idea, but I was very open to it. And Zachariah Sitchin, I have all of his books either in here or downstairs. And, I was really into that whole idea. And the saga just completely took that away without a doubt for me. And I was like, okay, so a lot of what the saga interprets as history is just all human based. There's no deities, there's no gods, there's no magical beings. The magic is more like what you could consider like Eastern mysticism would suggest about magic. It's more about consciousness and, being in line with nature and things like that. But beyond that, it's all stories of humans. So I was like, okay, let's see if I can try to find this somewhere else and see if it applies. So of course I wanted to immediately look into the most famous of the ancient alien stories, which is the Sumerian Anunnaki. And that's where it really started to unravel for me completely. I started to look into different sources, non-conspiratorial sources, more anthropological sources, and found over and over again that we have a grasp on who settled Sumer, and we know who it was that brought agriculture and animal husbandry to southern Mesopotamia. And it's not just this ominous, who knows if they were gods or not. Like when you talk to anthropologists or you read the old anthropology records from the 1700s and the 1800s, they were calling these people the Ubaid people. There's a whole list of different groups of individuals that were considered human, but of course not modern human. And that's where it gets a little fuzzy too, because we have things like Cro-Magnon, which now has been proven beyond the shadow of a doubt is anatomically and through DNA and everything exactly the same as modern human. So the name itself is almost just to suggest you're putting a stamp on when you want history to begin. It's the establishment just saying, well, this is when we were really humans. Disregard all this other history that may change the human story quite drastically. So
how far back does this go?
Just a little intro for it.
Yeah, with the Box Saga thing in particular, how far back do they claim it goes? Is it in line with like biblical shit, like 5,000-6,000 years, or?
No, that's the beginning in the Box Saga, about 3,000, 4,000 BC. That's the beginning of the period that they call the re-legioning of the world. This word re-legion. And legion, we understand from Catholicism, is roughly like a conglomeration, a mass, we are legion, right? So it's a reorganization of the world. And that's where Box Saga claims we get the word religion. It's a redoing. It's a reorganization. This is also when the Box Saga claims that the black ink hit white paper.
That's
where the
correct
story
me if I'm wrong, because it was a while ago. You sent me all those links when I was at work, and I fucking peeled through them. Just as a refresher, now that's talking about when they got out of what they're considering the last ice age, or Atlantis, right?
Right.
And they
the young end of the Younger
right,
Dryas,
and they reconverged into what now we know as the modern civilization and continents into Europe, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Atlantis in the Box Saga is not a place. I mean, it takes place in a certain area, but it's a time period. All the land's ice. And in the old Swedish root language, which is what the Box Saga claims is the oldest language on the planet, this lines up. Atlantis means all land's ice. And they're referring to all the countries that were named with land at the end in the Northern Hemisphere. Iceland, Greenland, Deutschland, Svedland, Finland, all these different lands. They were the yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. Denmark did have a name that had land, and mark means land.
Right, because it was supposed to be one of the two.
Dan's mark,
right,
Dan's
it was
land.
Gonna say it was one of the two sons or whatever it was, right? And that was Dan's mark,
yes,
his place that he set up.
Yeah, the two kings, the we kings, the Vikings, the V-kings. This is the origin of that word. The two sons that didn't have official titles in the family, because in the original Paradise time, before the ice happens in the Box Saga, there's 12 sons and 7 daughters that have titles and responsibilities that have to do with the society. Any sons and daughters that are more than that, they were literally called the Moors, by the way. The more than didn't have any titles. They could be all kinds of helpers or whatever, but they didn't have official titles in line with the system in the society. So when ice time happened, when this cataclysm occurred and the whole Northern Hemisphere, according to Saga, was completely decimated by ice, similar to what we have during the Little Ice Age, they claim that the area around Helsinki was remained unfrozen, so they could survive there. But in that time period, they were trying to have as many kids as possible, trying to survive. And because of that, these two kings eventually, these two people that wanted to be kings and wanted to have titles and didn't, they're like, well, we can leave the ice now. We can get out and reemerge back into the Levant and Europe and that whole area and start to mingle with all these southern areas of the world that weren't decimated by the ice. So you think like they were cut off from these people for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and then they suddenly had contact again. So it was definitely alien for sure, and that's where we get a lot of those kind of ideas. But
so speaking of the Moorish people, yeah, no, that's fine. We can go wherever. We just had to fix our Wi-Fi. Apparently, I was not hardwired, and now we are. So hopefully that you froze for a second there. So I'm like, ah, shit. What the fuck? No. Anyway, so speaking of the Moors, isn't that black people? Am I wrong on that?
That's, I think, yeah, the dark skin, yeah, for sure. But there's dark skinned people in the Box Saga too, you know.
Yeah,
that's how we start off.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Moorish people. There's a whole rabbit trail with that if anybody wants to look that up, because I haven't done it myself, but I have a couple friends that will look into that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering how that played in.
Wasn't it essentially that we had all started out dark-skinned, which is also where we get the idea of we all started in Africa now, that story. But once the split happened, when they were basically stuck, I don't know if it was Atlantis at the time or whatever, but their skin over generations and hundreds of years from the snow. And people were talking about, like, if you've ever gone snowboarding, you've ever gone up in the snow for a day during a clear sunny day, you're getting a double dose of sun, because you're getting it from the sun itself, and then it's bouncing straight the fuck back off you.
I got like 3rd-degree burns on my nose doing that.
Dude, me too. Yeah. It's just skiing.
You gotta wear like generally like a lot of sunscreen when you're going skiing or snowboarding, especially in the Northeast.
Right here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was peely. It was all blistery and peely all over just my nose.
I go climbing up in the Northeast, and I had a friend that come with me, and he didn't have a balaclava or goggles or anything. We walked to like the high peaks up in New Hampshire, and I was like, we're gonna be hitting 50-mile-an-hour winds, and your face is gonna be just
You're gonna get like boils. Like I've seen people with boils from it. Like
I lost my goggles one time when I was climbing up in the presidential range in New Hampshire, and the wind just took them and flew them right off my face. And so the rest of we were on a ridge line for 4 mountains. So it was just all exposure the whole damn time. I'm like,
you can burn the whites of your eyes. Like people get sunburned eyeballs. How wild is that?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
But yeah, saying you take an Arctic animal out of the Arctic for long enough, and they will lose that or gain more pigment in their fur and things like that. And that is what they claim happened to Arctic animals with the eye color and the hair color.
Well, and isn't the Box Saga pretty closely related, not just on skin color and how they explain it? And I'm probably going to bumble over it because it's been 2 years since I've looked into all this, but isn't that pretty heavily tied into India?
There's a lot of the Box Saga takes place in what we now call India, but was then called Hindustan.
Okay.
You gotta end it with a stan.
As soon as you start looking into the origins of the Vedic people and the Vedas and where they come from, you get big time Box Saga vibes. I can't remember the author, but someone in the late 1800s wrote a book called The Arctic Home of the Vedas. And it's all about how the Vedas are really alluding to their homeland being in the North Pole. But the Box Saga claims that Helsinki was the North Pole, and that the whole cataclysm shifted the whole Earth. And if that's the case, then even if we were honestly looking for it, we'd be looking in the wrong place for evidence of it. You know, there's a big Catholic cathedral over the Finnish supposed Holy Land. You know,
doesn't modern science say that the poles shift? Could that have been what it was if that's true?
Yeah, there is evidence for that. I actually found someone was sharing like declassified shit about like UFO stuff a couple of years ago, and it was debunking some aspect of UFO whatever. But the thing that I picked up on was they mentioned something totally unrelated in the memo, and it was about some sort of cataclysm that may have possibly happened that would have shifted the pole like 23 degrees or something like that. Some
which
some
is pretty spot on.
estimate
If
that was
I'm-
pretty spot on for Helsinki,
yeah,
which
I think we're at what
yeah.
22 or something like that right now.
something, yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I can't remember where we started this. I know you guys asked a question and it just kind of went off, but
We just go wherever. If anything
hell
pops
yeah.
in.
So, well, yeah, I mean, I've been trying to tie the Box Saga to other areas. That's kind of been my focus. And the Anunnaki, that led me to a man named Nicholas Devir. And Nicholas Devir has been dead for a while now, but he was the like last remaining member of the Court of the Dragon, or the Dragon Legacy, if you will. It's this whole family legacy through Europe, and it's recognized as a sovereign nation, and like all the paperwork's there, it's all official. There's even a rumor that they helped with the Bilderberg group, or at least helped put it together or something. I
Say
don't
they're
know
a
about
sovereign
that.
nation. I don't mean to interrupt you, but if they're a sovereign nation, do you know like their geographical location? Would it be like what would it be present day, or would it be like span over several different countries?
It's in Hungary, supposedly.
Okay.
But there's so let me quickly add here that Nicholas Devir had gone on a rampage at one point about a dragon court that popped up in Hungary. That might be what I'm thinking of. That was like a fraudulent version of his family.
Okay.
And there's a lot of controversy around Devir, of course, but what he was pulling from when he wrote his books, like his book was called The Dragon Seed and The Dragon Legacy, he was pulling from his family archives. And what was interesting to me was Lawrence Gardner, who was another author, was turned on to Nicholas Devir's work because he was part of a council that was helping all these British royal families put their family trees together. And Lawrence Gardner started to recognize a lot of interesting connections. So he went and got in touch with this Nicholas Devir, and they became close friends, and they started working together on a lot of this information. And they had a big falling out eventually, where this book right here, Realm of the Ring Lords by Lawrence Gardner. I've spoken to Abby Devir, Nicholas's daughter, and she claims that like this is all plagiarized. This was like basically Nicholas Devir's work, and it's crazy. That's the funny part. It's all kind of alluding to Tolkien because this is where it's all led me, because I've been looking into Tolkien and all of his personal quotes and all these letters he was sending his son and what he was saying. And I'm like, oh, fuck, this dude knew about the Box Saga without knowing about the Box Saga. And this is why the elves were 6 foot tall and not little fucking creatures. And this is why like all of this started to unravel for me. I'm like, all right, let me just put the cart before the horse, as they say not to do, and start looking through all these folkloric ideas of magical creatures. And if I'm trying to debunk aliens, maybe I got to take another step away and go, was all of this to fictionalize some part of history, to make people unarrestable, first of all, and hide the aspects of history that they didn't want out there? How would they do this, and what would they do? And I started just putting this together in my head that this is a massive provocation. Like they provoke us with all these layers of bullshit, but underneath there's truth. But you have to know what you're looking at. And the language the words have stayed the same, but the meanings have changed. It's unreal, because what we think
do they say about elves and shit then? Like the Box Saga, they mention elves.
They do mention elves briefly, but not very much. Just in the fact that their alphabet is called Alphornis Bet, and it means the rhyme of the elves, which is interesting. Elf, if you go back into etymology, which people take for granted, because the roots of words come mostly before the mythologies and folklores that we use. If you look at elf in the very beginning, it just means shining or white. And we can relate that to El in the Sumerian language, and Elu in Akkadian. It means shining ones. But the thing is, shining related to nobility. It related to intelligence as well. related to enlightenment. It was kind of like this divine right of kings, where king meant crown, and it referred to the crown chakra and enlightenment, and only those who were fit to rule ruled. The only king that was in place was that was enlightened, right? It was a perfect alignment of what the word meant and what it was being practiced as.
So,
if that
so
makes
then
any
you
sense.
see a little bit of truth in that, like just while you were explaining what that meant, it's like you always, for the most part, like in Tolkien's work, the elves are these like long-living, pompous, very smart, very shrewd,
Humans.
shiny fucking humans, basically.
Yeah.
That
They're not
always
humans,
have-
but they're humans.
Yeah,
they're only not humans because they don't call themselves fucking humans, and they got pointy ears and they live a long time. But
They
like,
probably don't call each
Wait.
other elves either. They probably say
Yeah,
something
exactly.
else.
Well,
They
the
do
elves
not.
that like we've been taught to believe in, like the little tiny elves, like they're not tiny, right?
right?
'Cause I know
and-
the Nordic people, especially like Finnish and Icelandic and Swedish, even now in present day, elves have like a big part of their like culture and like their rituals, and like they have magical powers and all that stuff.
Yes.
But I always thought they were like tiny.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what it's all kind of mixed together with sprite and fate and fairy and pixie,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
All
like
these
the, like
terms
the
get
lore
mixed
and, like,
together
the
for
magical,
us.
the mysticism. Okay.
Yeah, to a supernatural author that you're going to read, or some medium that's going to tell you all the answers. All these words are pretty interchangeable when they start throwing them around. You know, they talk
Okay.
about,
So they're a
maybe
part
they're
of,
going
like,
to do a
fae folk.
ritual. Right. And maybe
Yeah.
they're going to do a ritual in a fairy circle, right? Well, what if you find out a fairy circle was actually what these round
Well, you
table
don't mess with the
courts.
fairies. You don't mess with the fae. They'll fuck
Well,
your
check
life
it
up
out.
if you do.
Don't eat their food.
Fairy circle is what the
mess with
round
them.
table courts in Caledonia were called. So when these people, so we're talking about the round table, like Knights of the Round Table, all these mythic Arthurian legends, that's exactly what we're talking about. In Caledonia, the royal Picts, which is, or technically called the Pic She, which is where we get pixies from, they would sit in these round tables. And this, to me, harkens back to Box Saga, because it's all about circles and rings, and even all of the Grail lore that I'm finding in Sir Lawrence Gardner and Nicholas Devir and everyone that wrote like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, all this mythology surrounding the Holy Grail. They talk about two most important symbols, and it's the ring and the staff. And the thing is, in Box Saga, it's the ring and the pole. It's the same damn thing. And I'm reading Lawrence Gardner, I'm going, holy shit, this guy knew about Box Saga without knowing about Box Saga. And the more I look and the more people I talk to, it's a common theme. There's another guy named, I'm gonna blank on his name. He wrote an amazing book. You can get it on Amazon called The Lost Civilization of the North. And he ended up stumbling upon Box Saga because he was trying to prove that the Jason and the Argonauts story was not myth, that it was actually true, and he could trace their footprints and their footsteps and where they went. And by doing that, he stumbled upon the Box Saga and spent the next 10 years becoming Eeyore Box's friend before he died.
Interesting.
crazy.
So what's more the interesting like etymological things that you've come across? Because
Dragons,
that is
everybody's
like you said,
favorite.
everybody kind of like undercuts it, but they all come. It's so weird when you see different languages that have words that sound the same. Even like English to Spanish, that's pretty close on some words. It's almost the same
English
word.
takes a lot from Dutch as well. Like modern
Yes.
day English, it takes a lot from Dutch.
And old High German too was a big one, but
Germanic, yeah, it's in a Germanic language. So yeah.
Well, and the Box Saga claims that English is a miracle because it's like a perfect combination of the two languages talked about in the Box Saga. So they have root language, RUOT, which is, or ROT in some cases, but RUOTSI, Ruotsi, is a language spoken in Russia and Finland. That is true. It's exactly what we're talking about here. And some people know it, some people don't. But there's a whole tradition of families in Finland and other areas of Scandinavia who are basically the innkeepers. Like you see a lot of movies about that, mostly horror movies telling you to stay away from all those places. But those families are basically these root-speaking families left over that were allowed to remain near Helsinki and in Finland and everything, but just don't talk about your don't talk about the old ways. You're not allowed to, you know.
Didn't he say that? I think it was Carl Borgen said it's like a cross between Old Finnish and Latin, where it's like you can see these quote unquote root words that we would call root words in English, and every single one of them, it's like, right, but then if you take Latin and you cross-reference that with Old Finnish or the root languages you're talking about, it's like you can see this trail, this like breadcrumb trail through etymology of how we got
meaning.
the English word. Yeah, it's like all broken
and meaning
down
as well, which is really weird. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and that's why I urge people to jump into our Telegram that we've created. There's over 100 people in there now, and a lot of these guys in there have studied the Box Saga with Eeyore before he died, and they're all in there to ask questions. You know, I invite skeptics all day long, every day. I'm like, please bring challenging questions, bring parts of history that may seem like it could debunk the Box Saga. Bring it on, because we need more eyes on this, you know? Because if we're just going to use mainstream history to debunk the saga, well, fine, go for it. Have fun. You know, you'll do that easily if you're going to use academia to debunk anything we talk about on these shows. But yeah.
Link will be in the show notes with that. Shoot that over to me afterwards, and I'll put
absolutely.
It in there.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just encourage people to ask questions. Yeah, let's do one of everybody's favorites, dragon. Let's talk about dragons, because we did already talk about the dragon family. Like, where does this come from? Well, dragon comes from Edrakon, which is Greek, and that comes from. Let me actually look this up specifically, because it's kind of weird how they go about talking about this. And I have this whole list here of different words we can go over. But okay, so we got dragon, Latin Draco. Before that was the Greek drakon. Prior to that was edrakon, to see clearly. In Hebrew, the equivalent is nahash, meaning serpent, but the Semitic word from the consonantal stem NHSH meant to decipher or find out or see clearly. So serpents were the wise men, the wise seers, the shamans, the druids. So basically we're talking about, and this is the thing, you can go to every bit of serpent symbolism, no matter where on the whole planet, and you find these same characteristics, these same personality types. You know, the Greeks, dragons were conveyors of enlightenment. To the Gaels, they were representatives of sovereignty. To the Chinese, they're bringers of good fortune. These were the Merlins of the royal courts. The seers to the high kings.
Dragons?
Oh, the Magi?
Yeah.
The Magi, where we get the word magic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Druids, Magi from the ancient Indo-European priesthood. And they were called the wise ones in old Zoroastrian religion.
Well, not to veer off too much, but Astro Theologists will say that the three wise men were the three stars in Sirius's belt.
Yeah, it's both. So basically how you would do that is you'd say, well, then you'd have to, so that's the thing about the Astro Theology and matching that up with like fractal reality and as above, so below, where just because it turns all of our old stories into a farmer's almanac, it doesn't necessarily take away from those stories. You know, those stories are still historical. A flood still happened, right? Characters were still important for the moving and shaking of cultures and where these cultures went, the parting of the Red Sea, quote unquote. Like, that may be mythological, that may be allegorical, but there's roots, historical roots that kind of tell a story of where people went. You know,
well,
when
I think
we
at
have
this point, a flood is not even, the deluge. I don't think that's even up for debate. It's in so many texts, not just the Bible. People were really quick to dismiss it because it's in the Bible. So therefore, the Noah's Ark thing, different story, I think. That was probably more of, a bunch of samples of DNA or something. That makes a lot more sense. Kind of like the seed vault in
to preserve our
Switzerland or wherever it's
species,
at.
or just preserve like the common species, or to preserve our environment as we know it. Like,
right,
Yeah,
to repopulate.
Box Saga's got a Noah story. It's
Yeah,
called
they're
the
in
Gotland
everything.
story. It's
They're
the
crazy.
Gotland story. There's an island away, like on the outside of Sweden, and the story goes that when Atlantis, the area of Helsinki that was protected but surrounded by ice, once the ice started to melt, which they were starting to see was happening, and that's how they started to be able to get out and mingle with the rest of the world. All these glaciers were just moving southward and destroying everything. So Atlantis fell into the sea in this part of the Box Saga. So, it's funny how there's a lot of little pieces that line up with the allegory or not the allegory, the narrative that we hear from Plato, and the stories that we hear even from channelers and people in the know. They talk about Atlantis falling into the sea or something like that. That's where the Atlantis story in Box Saga lines up, where eventually it gets destroyed. And the remaining people, move to this island called Gotland outside of Sweden. And it's really cool. They have a fucking answer for every part of history. That's why it's so fascinating.
Well, what you were talking. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just gonna side trail real quick, and then you can go. We talked to a dude on a show the other week, and he was talking about how he's like basically looking for Noah's Ark, and he's been looking at, I don't know, radar or something. I think I took a piss during that part of it. But I talked to him after the show, but he's looking at that. But I saw an interesting thing the other day on the Noah's Ark thing. Based on the measurements the Bible gave for how big it would be physically impossible. Especially if you go by, what they say, we've lost so many species to extinction in that time. It would be literally impossible to fit 2 of every single thing on that size of a ship. That alone, it's ridiculous. So either there were little vials of DNA or sperm and eggs or something. Like, who fucking knows? And maybe they just had the technology to do it back then.
Real quick, just to comment on that, that does kind of paint a picture, right? Like, that paints a very typical picture of what we have from Atlantis. We have this wicked advanced society, but that's kind of,
and
it's kind of like
wicked
framing
as in like crazy. Not,
oh yeah, I apologize. I'm from the
Hampshire,
East Coast.
Wicked means very.
Yeah, very
East
intensely.
I'm from Boston.
Fucking wicked. Oh, you are? Cheers, homie. I'm not.
No, I'm from Brooklyn. No.
Oh, you're from Brooklyn. Okay,
No, I'm
sorry.
from Brooklyn. No, I'm from New York. No. Please don't.
Word. Okay.
Whoa.
But I know.
All right.
Oh,
Well, I'm from
that's very
Boston,
opposite.
so
That's
whatever.
very opposite. I was gonna say I thought we had more. Okay. But I don't know. Where should we? What were we just?
Ben was gonna say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Well, there's 2 caveats to that on the Noah's Ark story. I heard, and it actually kind of ties in with what I was going to say before that. The idea of Noah's Ark, when he said 2 of every animal, is that one, they were, young, or like you were talking about, vials or embryos or whatever. But the other idea was that it's a post-credit saying 2 of every animal that we have now, not just 2 of every animal that could have existed, like dinosaurs or whatever the fuck it is. It's like, it was a post-credit to say 2 of every animal that now exists is what he was capable of getting on the Ark. And I'm like, okay, I could see that, because that points to what I was going to say before that, when he was talking about it's the same words, but they've changed so drastically. Paul Wallace talks about, when he's going through the Bible, affrication in the languages of, like, you can take the same words, put them in the same string, and then hundreds or thousands of years later, somebody can go to translate those same words, and it will be wildly different than what it is now. Just in our lifetime, we've seen some words go from meaning one thing to changing a bunch of
Complete
times.
other meaning.
We've seen that in the last 2 years, 3 years.
Just in the
It
last
happened
year, in
last
fact.
month. It literally
Yeah.
happened last month, I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah. And so what do we always say on that point? Like, we always say, no matter what conspiracy anybody's talking about, it's always to take away our power, right? To take our minds off of our own endeavors, our own families, our own this and that. It's always to remove our center, right? And man, what an incredible way to do that with our language, by taking our fear of death hostage and realigning all of this language. Whether you're New Age, whether you're Western religion. So, you can be like, fuck Western religion, man. I'm all New Age. It's like, yeah, you're all falling for the same psyop.
Still the same thing.
And it's not to take away anybody's like spiritual, quote unquote, entity encounters. I've had them too. But I also like quantum physics, and I like Schrodinger. And Schrodinger said, multiplicity is only apparent. In reality, there's only one mind. So it's like this idea of multiplicity at all, the fact that we're all sitting here talking to each other, the fact that you can you can meet God or Jesus or Buddha or an alien on psychedelics or meditation or any of these sort of experiences. You can cross, quote unquote, dimensions. All of this is consciousness subjectively dealing with reality. All of it.
I saw something you posted
to
a while
go back
ago.
to that whole like yellow, red, and blue balls, like just a little baby playing with different colored balls. It's like that. Yeah, that sounds more like reality than all this multitude of. I mean, that's one level, but the unity is far above and more real than all these distractions. But yeah, go ahead.
So I saw something you posted. It's probably been a year or so, but I can't remember how you worded it. You said different dimensions are just quantum superposition. It was something to that effect. And I was
the multiverse is just quantum superposition.
There we go. So what I was going to ask you, I forgot to. I forgot I was going to tell you about that. I was like, isn't that just saying the same thing with different words though?
Kind of, but not really, because the multiverse attitude in every Hollywood movie that's handed to us, along with all the not suppressed alien alien disclosure bullshit that's happening, all the stuff that's not getting censored and getting promoted everywhere, and people are starting companies from the government and shit. All these assholes that are giving us disclosure, talking about the multiverse and stuff, they're hinting at all this shit. They're acting like we can travel there like superheroes. It's the equivalent of the New Age or the Western religions saving our fear of death. After this, I get to be an interdimensional space traveler, meet up with all my spirit guides and my aliens and my homies. It's saving. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from anybody's beliefs, but it's absolutely the most crucial thing that I would hold hostage over people if I was trying to control them. Their fear of death.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the easy.
And the old world order did it for thousands of years, and now come on, guys.
New times.
They did it with religion.
Playbook.
Yeah, look what the Catholics did. Look what the Catholics did to Bach and that entire civilization, trying to rewrite history by not only taking what they believed, but changing what they believed, suppressing it from people so they could not read further, and then also putting it on the level of the law, where you didn't just have to believe it. You actually had that fear of death if you didn't believe it and followed it. If you didn't follow it in your actions, you could get killed. If you said that you didn't believe it, you could get killed. And they changed what that belief was. It's like, it's this big fucking turning snowball of fuckery that they have done. Yeah, inversion that they have just done over time, to where now it's like, it's not just questions. It's exactly what you said. It's all just layers of bullshit. Every time you ask a question, there's 10 different leads that you could follow, and more than likely those 10 leads are all going to be bullshit, and you have to go past that, and then there's 100. It's like, how do you unravel that from our point now where we're so advanced?
Well, so let's get back to the words, man.
Anytime you hear something from an organization of kid fuckers that are trying to, debunk another train of thought, I'm like, maybe I'm going to look into that then, because you guys fuck kids.
Maybe don't believe the kid fuckers.
Yeah, like I hate this. Yeah. Like, why are we trusting any documentary about ancient civilization coming from Brandeis Netflix? Sorry, Graham Handencock, but I don't trust you. Say something once about Europe or Scandinavia, asshole.
We watched a couple episodes of that one, and I get what he's trying to do, but again, it's on Netflix, and not to just throw out everything, but it's still like...
No, but yeah.
He wants money.
It's all a money grabbing operation. You're not going to get like... I think you get like surface level facts anytime Netflix comes out with like a documentary, but you don't actually get the real facts.
He's so provocative. He's got such an actor. He's so good, and I loved him for a long time. And I don't hate the guy or anything, but if it's being promoted on Netflix, it's not disrupting shit.
Kind of Obama sign. It's like you know that he's bringing up good. He brings up amazing points that nobody knows to start your thinking without ever answering any of the questions that he knows you're going to start asking in your head. So it's like he knows it's very provocative because he knows exactly where he's taking you, and then you hit that wall of right when am I going to get an answer? It's like it's the same thing with Ancient Aliens and all the rest of those shows.
Right, and they're
just a little bit. It's just a little bit more covered.
It's all in tandem, and it's in pieces, and it's what's the word? Compartmentalized. It's perfect. And it's
Yes.
delivered to us in a nice tailored fashion where no one's coming on too strong to try to sell us on it. It's a number of different areas of study and visibility coming at us from different angles. So you have Graham Hancock. He doesn't tell you who he thinks these ancient civilizations might be. He just alludes to them existing.
Or where they came
He
from.
does
He
his
just
part, and where
alludes to where they might have come from.
Sure. And then you have other shows and other people that do interviews alongside people like Graham Hancock that talk about who they think those people were. You have people like Billy Carson everywhere talking about Anunnaki being from, well, they're from different parts of the star systems. Let me tell you, they're from all over. Okay. And it's like, fuck you, dude. You're literally, this is conjecture and you're preaching it as the new facts, especially when you have people like Gary Nolan and the whole military psyop bullshit side of the disclosure coming slowly but surely forwards, suggesting ancient aliens. So it started with Bob Lazar on Joe Rogan in 2016. He said one thing. He said one of these objects may have come from an archaeological dig. That's what I read. I don't know if it was true. That's what he said on Joe Rogan that one time. Slowly but surely, that line has increased. It's gotten more popular. It's been repeated and changed and said in different ways by a number of these clowns, Lou Elizondo and Gary Nolan, all these people. They're alluding to what a lot of the alternative fringe for a long time has been thinking, maybe this is it, right? It's aliens or something. And I don't blame them because I was part of it. And if you have no reason to think that behind the curtains is just more humans, because think about it, we've grown up in a mundane world and we've been told everything is it as it appears to be. And anything fantastical is bullshit. So then once you are forced to turn your head and forced to question those same people and those same principles, and you start to let the floodgates open and go, huh, maybe everything is a lie, right? As we all have. Where's the governor? Where do you
I like that you said that. Everybody starts with that, the if you want to call it the red pill thing. Everyone starts with, okay, baseline is everything we know is a lie. Then you work your way backwards from there, and you're trying to weed out the false. It's not so much about looking for what's true. It's looking for what isn't true, and then kind of like process of eliminationing it all the way down the line. And that's a long process.
I really appreciate you
And a
saying
long
that because
elimination.
I also feel like that is a more rare perspective than exists in this larger community. For the most part, we have like top of the charts podcasts and stuff like that, like people that, you know, I would like to say I respect in some ways. Oh, fuck yeah. You know, respectable podcasters that at least know how to dig deep into certain topics, just running wild with shit that is surface level bullshit and doesn't deserve any credibility whatsoever, you know. And it's unfortunate. That's just, and the thing is, it's not, was it Nephilim or was it aliens or what? Those are the questions being asked. Instead, they don't even question the possibility of what Nephilim means or where any of this shit. They don't care about the history. They've already planted their flags in what all these terms mean for the alternative worldview that is being built by this new media that we are a part of.
Right. It's confirmation bias. They're taking an idea that they want to push, and then they attach out of context or sometimes in context the pieces that support that theory and go, look, I have all the evidence right here. And it's like, yeah, but the evidence that you've had, it works because we already all know that, but it was subjective to something else. And now you're tying all these loose ends into something that none of it doesn't exist. So
you're
it's like,
putting a bunch of what ifs in a box and then acting as if that box is your only box now. You're going, well, okay, among our what ifs, these are all concrete facts now. Like the flags have been planted in Nephilim are supernatural giants, right? From like there's no wiggle room. We are approaching it from that point, and that is the end of it. Pixies,
meanwhile, there's a
elves,
warehouse,
fairies, right?
A warehouse of other boxes that you haven't even got into yet.
Well,
When
right.
you're
Think
talking
about
about
it this way.
ancient-
If you're coming from like a religious point of view, then you're looking at sprites, goblins, fairies, pixies, all these folkloric terms, all these mythological terms that are non-Christian. They're all evil spirits from demonic realms. So then you get Gary Nolan, a scientist in disclosure, Stephen Greer, Lou Elizondo, alluding to alien disclosure being connected to demonic entities and shit like that. Republican congressmen saying that and wanting to stop the UAP research because it may be demonic. They're fucking feeding you all the fear from that perspective. If you're new age, you're laughing at all them going, dude, this is all peace because all these pixies and angels and fairies, they're coming down to be our friend. They're both full of shit. And the ones who know are like, great. They are getting further and further and further and further and further away from the truth, and they're burying their ancestors further and further and further and further. Because if it's the case that I'm saying, and it's humans, and all of our gods and all of these things in the past that we're talking about are stories of human beings completely relegated to fiction, then that is what is happening with alien disclosure and all of this convergence of all these sub genres of thinkers. It's all working to eradicate and bury that history forever.
Yeah,
If
and it
dragon
makes sense.
means person that sees clearly, if dragon initially meant shaman, before the idea of a flying beast in mythology ever even existed, then we have to default to that being upstream of the mythology. The
Or at least
human
a
term for
possibility.
goblin and leprechaun and sprites. All leprechaun, that's a great one because it comes from leprecorpin, which just means scaly body. But the scaly body reference comes from the fact that these were horse troops wearing this specific body armor. And the body armor was made from small overlap plates of bronze, which tarnished to a greenish color. And they looked like lizards and dragons, and they called each other that. Leprechaunus.
When you're talking about the ancient alien thing versus humans, there's a book, I think Mysterious Universe covered it, and if you haven't heard of that show, stop the show and go listen to them because they're way better and funnier.
Super famous.
Yeah, I think they covered this book. It's from 2020, Jared Murphy. It's called It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us. Now, I haven't read the book. I think I just heard somebody cover it, and I think it was MU. But yeah, it's not aliens, worse, it's us discovering our lost history. So from what I remember of that, he's basically like, even from, mainstream history, we see all of these cycles of rising and falling of empires. It's in most ancient texts. Even the Bible talks about, the metaphor of the dude that has like a gold head and a silver chest, or it's something to that effect. And then all the way down to like his clay feet. And then that is, and then it repeats cyclically. And think about Rome. They were the most advanced empire ever, and they fell. And then we went into the Dark Ages, what they call the Dark Ages, and you look at cathedrals, and you're like, sure, sure. They didn't know what they were doing at all with, architecture. But so the hubris to think that we're just at the top of our game now. We have houses that last 20 years and then they spring a leak. Not to rag too much on modern shit. It is very nice, and we have cool little mirrors in our pocket that we can talk to each other on, and it's great. But it makes me think of what they actually had back then. All that's left is
they have
stone.
the aqueducts in Rome have been around since literally the Roman Empire, and highways crumble after like 60 years in this country or any country, to be honest.
Right.
So like,
there's 13
take a look at if you want to make a comparison.
Right.
Yeah.
And you look at megalithic structures that are popular all over the world, and you can go visit a lot of those sites, and some places that you can't even visit yet that are still just
The
dig
one in
sites.
Rio,
The ones underneath.
The one in
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I was interrupting. Sorry.
I was just saying the ones, like, we're finding more and more that whatever's underneath is more intricate, better built than even what's on top that we find amazing about the past. Baalbek is an incredible site. Those stones are just enormous, and it's just insane. The whole Baalbek structure is on this platform that was put there. It's insane. Must have been giants.
Right, and I don't necessarily.
Let's do giant. Let's get into giants.
I don't necessarily say there weren't giants, because I think there's evidence to show that there were, and there's some big
Sasquatch
motherfuckers out there. I've known fucking giants compared to me, But no, I mean, like even Andre the Giant, like if you can make a dude that big, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some 12, 15-foot motherfuckers at some time. Maybe they
It's
had
got to be
more
Nephilim
food.
blood.
I don't know.
You know?
I mean, who
Yeah,
knows?
dude. So that's
It's some
the thing.
kind of blood.
I'm a big fan of Sasquatch, and I think the Sasquatch situation is less of a metaphysical thing, and I think it's more of a ancestral sort of situation. You know, I
Because
do
every
agree about
culture
the. Everybody talks
has,
about
like,
the
their
Nephilim in
legend.
there. Oh yeah, and it's very
Every
interchangeable
culture has
with
their
the wild
Sasquatch, their
man.
Yeti, their like big like snowman
Right.
legend.
The
like,
Yowie in
where you
Australia.
go.
And when you look
yeah.
at the giant stories from Scandinavia and the word Jete, which sounds like Yeti, but it means giant.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa,
I mean,
interchangeable.
Bigfoot could
you
just
know,
have
wild
been
man.
He could have just been an ancient, huge Danny DeVito. That's what it seems like. Is Bigfoot's just a big, hairy dum-dum for the most part, all the stories I've heard. But who fucking knows? He's made it
Well,
this
that's
far.
of course how they made it look, right? But who knows? But the giant thing, it's really interesting to me because I'm not gonna say that there weren't bigger people back then, because I think there absolutely were. I don't know how big I'm willing to go, but like it is interesting that at a certain point this word giant refers in some way not only to size and stature but also nobility and royalty. It's very interesting. There's
I
a
think that's
quote
why
from a
people make the
book.
Nephilim link with that, is because they're like, somehow these giants were like nobility, and then they put that in with Nephilim or whatever you want to call
Possibly.
that thing.
The reason for when I started first hearing Sasquatch like encounters and people giving their explanations, it was usually like Christians would assume it had to be something within their frame of reference, you know, and they would often reference the Nephilim.
That's
And
their
I
box
heard
they're
that
working out of. That's
a
their little
million,
box they're working out
right?
of.
And that's fine. And I think that, but the thing is I take those texts pretty seriously too, just maybe not in as much of a supernatural form that they do, just because I don't look at the sons of God versus the daughters of man as like supernatural beings fucking earth women. Like
Right.
Earth Girls Are Easy with Jeff Goldblum. Like it's not that. It's we're talking about like God-fearing people versus heathens, you know. We're talking about two different groups mating, like a forbidden love situation, a Romeo and Juliet of cultures. And back then the fucking xenophobia was off the charts. Everybody was against each other. Everybody had their own kingdoms for a very long time. Like nobody trusted anybody. There was a lot of that. So I think the xenophobia plays into that as well. But I think these are two warring groups, or two very polar opposite groups. The sons of God versus the daughters of man. Like that's saying something, maybe even along the lines of like the Canaanites and the Sethites, maybe them coming together in some fashion. And whoever the children that would have come off that as offspring are a blasphemy.
Was that
to
just the
the
writer calling them
God-fearing.
pussies?
I think it was calling it like unclean. Like this is where the hatred of the heathens and the hatred of the pagan ways from these Catholics. It's very weird. It's all over the place too.
Well,
It's
and
all
then there's the
connected
hatred
in
of the
some way.
goyim from certain tiny hat wearing individuals, but that's okay. They can have
Dude,
that in the Talmud.
the
But we can't
connections
say
with
Jew.
the connections with
You
Judaism.
can. I mean, I'm
Want
on.
to hear
I
something
say
funny?
it all the
Want to
time.
hear some interesting things
You can't say the K
about?
word. That's the one.
We've got a
Oh.
holy war going on right now, right, over in Israel.
That's
But-
the end of days. The Talmud
But-
and like the First Testament of the Bible say that when the Holy Land gets into a war, it's like the end of days,
Mm.
essentially.
So check it out. Israel, right where Jerusalem and Judea and the Sea of Galilee is, right in that little area, there used to be a city, a capital city, an Aryan capital city called Scythopolis. Because if you look at the Scythians, they were the page 4 Aryans. They were Aryan in language, culture. And yeah, we can follow modern academia and say Aryans don't exist and that's just Nazi talk. Like that's propaganda. And the Arya, or someone that's talked about all over that area. And we can talk about the Indo-Europeans. And this goes back to the idea that Cro-Magnon sets the mark and goes, you can't talk about this in terms of humans. This is pre-human at this point. So this is where a lot of these lines get crossed. This royal Scythian idea versus the Scythians that we get in academia, which is almost nothing. The Scythians were just the Dothraki horse lords in Game of Thrones, basically. Real
Okay.
close.
I like that.
But also
whole,
the
like,
Sith in Star Wars too, because the Sith Lords, the fucking like white dude Palpatine, that's not a Sith. A Sith is this like red creature with horns coming out of his head. You know?
Is that
That's
why
what a
their
Sith-
lightsabers are red? Is that why their lightsabers
There's
are red?
something
like
to
in
do
Star
with
Wars?
that. There is something to do with that. But
I
the
thought this-
idea that the Sith Lords that Palpatine is a part of is basically those are fake Siths, and the real Siths were like decimated and destroyed on their home planet, and they just like turned into like wandering nomadic tribes.
Are you
And
saying
if you
something
look
like
up the
Star
comic
Wars
book-
isn't real?
Dude, if you look up the comic book and you look at what the Sith look like, they look like fucking Vikings.
but like
And they're
badass.
red-skinned Vikings.
So there is something to the color thing. Like we're kind of going into wordplay, but like the color thing is a huge thing. And there's plenty of podcasts that cover this, but a lot of people have noticed that in movies, especially, the bad guy always red, the good guy always blue. Now look at our political parties. If you're looking at mainstream media, the
Red
bad
and blue,
guy
yeah.
always the red Republican, the good guy always the Democrat, and
The
it's
blue,
played
mhm.
subconsciously over and fucking over in movies where the good guy's blue, the bad guy's red. Over and
Red
fucking,
is
just
seen
notice
as
it
like
next
such
time.
an aggressive color. Like in
Yeah.
psychology, red is like such an aggressive color, and it's associated with anger and hatred and evil, and just like be afraid. Like even red light district, when you think of that, like in modern like day, like it's associated with like these sinful actions or like this like these dirty things you do. Like when you go to the
Do you
red
think
light
that came
district.
from bloodshed back in the day? I mean,
Ooh.
Could be. I mean, why do you think cops' lights are red and blue? It's polarizing opposites, and they're like, get
That's
your
true.
attention, pull over, we are in control.
It's
you know?
true.
It's like hypnotizing almost like mind control, you could say.
Hmm.
Well, no,
Before
when
we,
like cops pull you over, those lights are blinding.
Oh yeah, it's terrible, and it freaks you out. Even if you're doing nothing wrong, you
Yep.
still kind of
Mhm.
squeeze
No, it's
a
blinding.
little turd out every time because you're like, oh shit, there's a cop behind me.
Yeah,
Before
want to
we
go over some more words before we
No.
yes.
Oh no, yeah, but we can do that too because I wanted to get your opinion on if the Box Saga says anything about not necessarily Hollow Earth or anything, but like under Earth, like we were talking about with like Göbekli Tepe and all these things are unearthing that seem like they were several fucking feet underground, but they're full cities, and we're just kind of unearthing it. There's a lot of people. This is not debatable in my opinion. There is tunnel systems under the Earth. Whether you think it's a globe or flat doesn't fucking matter. There are tunnel systems that have been there for a long fucking time. So it's either the remnants of civilizations past, or that's where aliens come from, or that's where who knows.
Like, that's
what
where you go
lives
down and
under
you meet
there.
the Nephilim, and you can't say the word Jesus Christ in front of the Nephilim. Have you seen that clip?
What?
That's like, oh, dude, look it up. There's like some whistleblower, some insider who knows his credibility, but it'll get shared around as much as humanly possible.
Of course.
Talking about, when I went into these underground facilities, I think it was in Antarctica, of course. You were told one rule only: you can't say Jesus Christ. These Nephilim
We
giants
have our
do
own
not.
tunnels. See, my people, we have our own tunnels. My people have our own tunnels. We've been discovered with it.
I did a quick. You got the Jew tunnels. I mean the kike tunnels. Sorry.
Which ones are we talking about? Those in Gaza or the ones in New York?
The ones in
Which
New
Either
York.
way, you can't say Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's
Either
so
way,
hilarious.
actually. So it's the
So
same
hilarious.
thing.
Yeah,
You
isn't
can't
that funny
say-
that even
God
if they're
damn
either they're demonic or they're Jewish, one way or the other.
You
they don't
also
want
can't
to
say the word God or spell it.
It's so funny.
You know.
That's so
Or are
funny.
those the same?
That's hilarious.
Well, I just googled. You can't say Jesus to Nephilim, and the first three or
It sounds
four.
like a song title. I love it.
Hey, that's a good song. Shout out Murph, my buddy and listener. Please write a song called "You Can't Say Jesus to Nephilim." Make it metal.
Yeah,
The
we'll
first
have to
like
have it.
three.
And have it ready
Song
by
title.
Saturday when we see you.
Yeah, the first
Right.
three fucking results are all from TikTok. One of them says the Nephilim giants can't say Jesus Christ. The other one says you can't say Jesus in Nephilim, and another one says they can't even say Jesus' name, hiding Nephilim giants and whatever. So yeah, go down that rabbit trail if you want.
What's
TikTok
funny
is a
about this
wealth
word-
of knowledge.
What's funny about
Sometimes,
this
like
word
TikTok is like,
Nephilim? Oh, sorry.
If it's done well, yes.
TikTok
So
can
do
be
you-
good and bad, right?
I mean, just like anything else. I mean, this show
Yeah.
can be good and bad. It's hit or miss.
The only
did
thing
you
that
wanna-
I've gotten removed from from TikTok was a advertisement for my Box Saga Telegram. It said I went against like voting something or other.
the
Like
Pope was behind that for sure.
I guess
He's
so.
shooting it
That
down.
was weird.
In between little boys, he was like reporting videos on TikTok.
He's like, move my 3 o'clock appointment to 3:05. I got to ban this guy. He's talking about Box Saga. All right, Jimmy, send him in.
Oh.
I mean, they did say, they made a deal with like the King of Sweden in 1298 that they wouldn't let the saga be publicly known for like 1,000 years until the world was ready to hear it. Like those words are always echoing in my head. It's very interesting. Like they came to an agreement with the then king that was Catholic at the time and said, yeah, when the world's ready to hear this, you can let it out again. But
That sounds
Weird,
like
it sounds like the
COVID
government-
thing. It sounds like
Sounds
the
like
COVID
the
results.
FDA and what the government does with releasing
CIA,
documents. They're like, we'll give
Don't
it
release this
80
yet.
years.
when
Yeah,
everybody's dead that did anything bad, then
Well,
release
When
the
everyone's
document.
dead
in
who would
50
have
years.
any idea that any of this
Right.
happened, then we can release it. It'll be brand new information and no one will give a shit.
And don't worry, these
Anyone who could be
these
charged,
vaccines.
anyone could be legally charged in any wrongdoing, they gotta
Right.
die, and then we'll let the public know what we
We
did.
gotta let the
Exactly.
statute of limitations run out, and when we release these, adverse reaction things from certain sharp things in 70 years, the kids are gonna be so fucking retarded by then they won't even care.
Well,
They
the
won't
kids
even
are
remember.
retarded now. They're retarded now. My little brother can't spell. I mean, he can't tell time. They're fucking stupid now, Gen Alpha.
No, they're the glowy kids. What do they call them? The
Indigo kids,
indigos.
the indigo children.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Oh,
why
fuck
they're
off.
they were in the
they're not
70s,
good
and now
at
we have them back
authority.
again.
They don't like authority very much. It's like, no, you're a bad parent.
Glo-
No, they
glowies
just
are
are so
feds.
resistant to like authority and stuff. They have a hard time with it. It's like, no, they're not.
Everyone
evolved.
hates authority.
I was about to say,
Oh, you don't know
everyone has a
shit.
hard time with fucking authority.
Everyone hates, yeah.
But
Everyone
reading
doesn't
about the
like
indigo
authority.
kids, I'm like, these are lazy fucking Gen X parents writing this shit. Like,
I
this is
don't have a problem
hilarious.
fucking authority. I'll fuck authority all day.
Right.
Insert
Yeah.
Pennywise drop.
Yeah. Anyway, shut up. Yeah.
Did you want to go into more etymology, or
Sure.
do you know anything about the Bach thing? Saying anything about underground shit? Because I was really
Oh
curious
yeah,
about
I'll
that.
answer that definitely. Well, that's part of the
Yeah.
mythology too. That there was a storehouse. So, okay, let me paint this weird ass picture.
Hold on,
okay?
and before you paint that picture,
Yes,
I have to dip out.
Oh my
Oh.
God, Ben!
Oh,
Ben.
okay.
Hang on. Where's this
Oh,
buzzer?
There.
That's Ben's hard, fast line. 7:05. He has to go night.
You weird homosexuals.
That's
No, it's
fair.
fine. I get it. You got to get up.
we get it.
Good to see you, Ben.
I was gonna say you look very healthy. More healthy
me?
than the last time. You too, Barb.
Maybe it's better
oh,
lighting. I don't
okay.
know.
I was gonna say, I don't know. You look more healthy than the last time I saw you.
Well, that's good.
I don't know if that's a
good.
compliment or.
yeah, what does
fun,
that
I mean,
mean?
I don't know.
but
I don't know.
It's
He
a
looks like.
backhanded
I'm
compliment.
telling you, it's probably I'm not in a dungeon anymore with
Is
really
it the
shitty
creams?
lighting. Yeah, I got him from Sandra Bullock. No,
Lotions and creams. Lotions and creams.
It was very good to see both of you guys. Sorry, I got to dip out, but
no worries.
I'm gonna listen to the rest of the episode since that's content that I will not be present for. Barb, it was good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ben.
This should happen more. This was a really good conversation. I really liked how all this went. So, to the listeners, I will see you guys next time. Maybe. And
Probably.
good night.
All right. Later,
See ya.
Ben. Yay! Thanks for making it, Ben. Always appreciate it.
So
Yeah,
underground Box Saga.
Yes, do it.
So the way they see the Earth is technically round. Sorry, flat earthers. That's how they see it in this story.
And we
they
just dropped
said-
500 people.
Sorry to
listening.
burst your
Right,
bubble.
right.
Sorry to burst your bubble.
But here's the thing. In my Telegram channel, we have a number of reputable people in there that bring a lot of hard hitting, like Box Saga supporting stuff and really interesting connections to the table that subscribe to a flat Earth. So they think it can work with Box Saga. I don't personally think it can, but I'm not smart enough to say yes or no, But at least in the story, they claim that the word balance comes from this ball and lance together, ball lance, because in paradise time the earth
The ring and the
was
staff, right?
right, the ring and the staff as well.
Is that a metaphor for reproductive organs like woman, man?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Everything is rings and poles. Everything is just rings and poles. Even
Well,
our
I mean, the
alphabet,
Box
every
Saga-
single letter is rings and poles, or parts of rings and parts of poles. put
We will
together.
leave out the part of the Box Saga because this is well
Where it's a
known,
lot of poles and
where
poles?
it's a lot of
Or
people
poles and
sucking their
holes?
own dicks.
The offer ring system, yes, or the
Yikes.
moon system, the moon system. Yeah, that'll be for another time. But that's the problem. It's the etymology, it's the root language that is extremely hard to fuck with or debunk. So that's when all those really out there weird fertility rite sort of things, it's like, what are you going to do? It's built into this fucking language. And the language is like, because it's based on all the sounds that we can say with our face, and they claim that those are pure sounds, and there's a mark for each one of those. It means that this root language keeps itself in line, and you can tell when something's a lie if you know this language. Like every syllable has to be correct in order for the saga to be told the right way. It's deep. It's crazy. But anyway.
Is that where
So
like
back to the
iambic
earth shape.
pentameter comes from? Like where you like read poetry? Is that like where that comes from? Like where you have to do like iambic pentameter? Like have certain inflections and like read things a certain way?
Maybe that's
Like
interesting.
when you
that
read
say that.
prose versus poetry?
They say that that Swedish people sing the root language. And when you think of how they speak, it's like in this rhythmic pattern, but the same language
Yeah, they
spoken
sounded
in monotone
hilarious.
is the root language. Yeah. So the earth to them is round. They considered in paradise time the earth to be perfectly aligned with the sun, basically giving that beautiful almost twilight all year round, all the time. And the whole planet was tropical, and we were all basically black. And there was palm trees growing in the North Pole and Finland and all that. It was a paradise. It was the Garden of Heathen, or Odin. Odin is the name of the sun, Uden. So it's kind of all interlaced there. But what they pictured was this spheroid type planet, planet, which is plan is plan, and et means one or family. So one plan or family plan is where supposedly we get this word planet.
Or what other people would say, a small plane.
Right.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Okay. But basically what they thought of as the earth, they basically thought it was a toroid, like a toroidal
donut.
field, like a donut, basically. And that's what they claim the North Pole was, this like vortex underneath the top of the planet, basically. And it led all the way into the earth. And it was they claimed that there was a storehouse that they used. There was a physical place that they could literally walk into. This is where it seems really magical. And this is where you get a lot of, well, this isn't where we get, but this is where I'm assuming, and a lot of us are assuming, we get a lot of the settings for a lot of our folklore and mythology, and how
Middle Earth.
grandiose it is. Yeah, man. Like, yeah, Midgard. So basically this spiral into the earth is where people from all over the planet would come to pay homage. This was the original concept of pilgrimage, and would go all the way up to this place, this temple, and they would bring these amazing works of gold carvings and statues and things like that. And the whole planet was intertwined in the Box Saga. So every area of the world was connected back to this all-father land in Finland, supposedly. That's what they say anyway. And if you follow that, it shows that like throughout every generation, they were storing more and more of these basically gifts and presents to the All-Father and to the Holy Land. The Holy Land. Like literally, there's a fucking hole. Like everything's very literal and phonetic. It's the whole E. H-O-L with an
E-Y.
I. The I, H-O-L-I, because the lowercase I in root language is E, this sound E. And what the lowercase I represents is the pole and the North Star directly above it. But it also, as above, so below, represents a prick and what comes out of the prick. Because what comes out of the prick is the seed of everything. And it's interesting because the Box Saga talks about how it's in line with the suppression of the sacred feminine, and how the Box Saga was like a feminine ruled society almost in a lot of ways.
Well, the Box Saga, of course.
The men had their history, but the women have their mystery. And this is where these two aspects come from. Really interesting how men and women had this very equal role in the saga, but the divine feminine was very important. But also you can see where like certain aspects of the masculine have also been suppressed too, because if you ask my wife, like my seed did none of the work. We did 2%, nothing. They were just there for 2 seconds. We did all the work. And yeah,
it was
of course,
2.5.
I respect the actual work and the 9 months, all that kind of thing, and what the female body does in the mitochondrial DNA. But to reject the idea that the seed itself is important, which is what modern science tells us, it's just nothing. Just take a little bit of DNA. It's nothing. Like no part of that physical thing matters really. It's all broken down and destroyed anyway, and re-put together in the female body. That's all well and good, but like it's definitely suppressed that the seed is important at all. It's an
nothing
interesting
would happen
thread.
if it didn't exist. So you have to think of it just back to basics. If
duality.
that seed, it doesn't matter how you feel about it or what happens after it fertilizes the egg.
Right.
If it didn't exist in the first place, we wouldn't even be talking about it right now.
Yeah, and I
you're
can
not
hear the
going to have
emails
that.
now.
You're not going to create that human.
Right,
Now
I can
think
hear the
about
emails
this.
now. Andy's misogynistic and whatever. That's fine. Send him away.
But I'm
Whatever.
trying to describe that like we are out of whack so much that we just float from one side of the pendulum to the other. We're definitely putting women back in power now. Will Ferrell confirmed it the other day. If anybody heard, Will Ferrell made sure to let everybody know that he really thinks women need to be in power because guys, we're just dumb. We're just playing with.
It's
cards.
amazing when a man tells women where they have to be. It's amazing that
Right? Yeah.
even if
Now you have to
even if
rule.
it's liberal, it's amazing to hear a man say what women gotta be doing. So as long Will Ferrell, so we love it. It's Will Ferrell, so it's not misogynistic, but it really.
Right.
So
Especially
Will
because he's
Ferrell's
disparaging men at the
mansplaining.
same time. He says we're all dumb. You guys got to take over.
Well,
But of
Will
course we're
Ferrell's
gonna go-
mansplaining
we're
where
gonna
a woman
push
should
that
be
as
in the kitchen.
Right. And we're
White
going
House.
to push that the furthest we can to the wrong direction again. Probably it's going to be out of balance in the opposite direction. Who knows? But I don't know. There's
No,
an
that's how it goes.
equality back then that existed supposedly, and it was very interesting. The Box Saga seems to answer a lot of questions or a lot of issues we have in modern society that just naturally with how they did things. Like for instance, they had a system, I believe it was after ice time, there was a system created with money where coins were printed with the king's face. They were, sent out to the populace to act as this currency, this motion, this electrical currency to keep the economy moving. But at the end of the year, all these coins were turned back in to be melted down to make the new coins for the new year. So there was no wealth gain. No one was gaining any
couldn't
wealth.
accumulate it. You couldn't
There's no
accumulate
accumulated
any wealth.
wealth.
Like, couldn't say
Right.
okay.
So not only that, but think about this. The firstborn son was the king, but he could not have children. So there was no nepotism. So it's just really, there's a few examples like that in the saga. You're like, whoa, wait a minute.
I bet they had
That's
term
part of the
limits back
society?
then.
Like I've never heard of anything like this in any alternative ever. And that solves like a number of big issues in modern society, the way they have those things set up. Like that's very intriguing,
Well, it'll probably end up coming back around to that. Like you said, it's a pendulum, and we've talked about that just with the cycles and all that. It goes so far in one direction that it has to go the other way. And
It
then
has to, yeah.
there's that golden age in the middle where it's like, balance. And then it goes, and goes way
It's
the
very,
other
very
way.
brief. That balance
Yeah.
is very brief.
The
It
most
doesn't
brief
have
of
to
all
be
of it.
though. God, I feel like there's a lot of.
agree.
It sounds like what those people did was in the process of knee-jerk react. Maybe they weren't knee-jerk reacting, but they're faced with a huge problem, and in trying to solve it, instead of slapping a Band-Aid on it, they really sat down and thought about how to deal with it. Meanwhile, that was a small group, and a horde of people behind them were rushing to slap the Band-Aid on it, and they overtook. But they kept their ways and probably kept it secret so that they couldn't get shut down. I mean, I can kind of get behind that.
Yeah, and people call it a conspiracy to say that people keep secrets for their own wealth and gain. Do you hear how stupid that sounds, listeners? People keep secrets for their own personal gain. Do you think a group of people might keep secrets for their collective personal gain? Oh, no, that's conspiracy theory. Now you're censored on Instagram because
I
misinformation.
think it could go both ways.
You're on
but
Instagram
I
jail.
definitely think there's a good part of it. There are good people keeping secrets.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes both ways.
Well, that's another part of it. Like a lot of the inversion that we point to as like bad, right? Or like done by the bad guys. It's kind of like, it really depends on how you look at it. Like during the Carolingian dynasty in France, a lot of what our modern day folklore and Arthurian legend was written around that time period. And it wasn't all like Catholic priests covering everything up necessarily. A lot of it was old world pagans who knew and remembered all these like this class of secret teachers or the mystery school people. These tales were written in a way that kept all these old world goings on alive, but only for those with eyes to see. Like the constant idea of a princess needing to be saved. Of course, that's being literally written out now of the Disney movies. It was left in for a long time.
It's not
Now
allowed.
that
There's
needs
no
to be
princess
gone.
being saved.
And I am in total favor of women being strong. Fuck Sigourney Weaver and all of my favorite female roles growing up. Like, awesome. Like, I never had a
No,
problem.
I'm not. A bitch wants to be saved once in a while. Now, let a
Right.
bitch get saved, all right? Let a
So
bitch
that
be
story-
a damsel in distress and get a
All of
white
it.
knight.
Especially
You
the
can point to all
Marvel
the
movies. And people have talked a lot about this. All the Marvel movies, especially superhero movies, they're showing this 105-pound chick just beating the fuck out of a 300-pound dude. I'm sorry,
Yep,
logistically, that does not work.
Right.
And it has
But they
nothing
know
to do with
ninja
being misogynistic.
moves
Yeah,
and-
well, okay.
No, well, you're saying men and
Kung
women
fu.
aren't equal? They can't participate in the same sports? Wait, what? That's controversial. You can't say that.
So yeah, that theme about the princess getting saved is constantly everywhere, all over folklore, and it's the idea of this old bloodline being lost. These old bloodlines being lost to time and forgotten about, and this valiant prince trying to regain the I don't know how you'd say it, but you picking up what I'm putting down here. It's like basically a desperation for a time lost. But there's a lot of different
I feel like
things.
it was a time where like you earned like that love, like you earned that like ability to then find a partner and like reproduce, and like you had to show like the qualities you would pass on to like an heir or like down like your family, like familiar.
Yeah, the
bloodline.
divine right of kings, big time. Yeah, that's what was replaced.
You're
And
granted that right to rule because of these qualities and stuff.
Right. And so that's where I'm finding all these folkloric terms in etymology: dragon, gnome, goblin, fairy. Fairy comes from fair, which is Old Greek, and it means noble or royalty again. It's the same place where we get the word pharaoh. So that's where we get this fairy from. And again, fairy circles were round tables of dudes making decisions. So remember that the next time the weird hippie girl with dreadlocks and tattoos on her face is in a fairy circle summoning fairies and pixies. She's pixies. You're going to summon a bunch of sweaty, painted warlords from the woods from Caledonia. These pics, like you're not going to want that. This
So
is where we
that's
get
funny.
this is where we get
Fairy
werewolf from.
The
This is
fairy
where we get the word
circles are
werewolf.
like the mushrooms that grow in circles in your
Oh,
grass.
fairy houses, yeah.
The fairy
But then we can
circles?
connect that. We can connect
But
that.
that sounds
mushroom
exactly like
lore
what you're
right up to
talking about.
Finland.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's what I think of when
absolutely.
I think of like fairy circles. I think of like the fae, and like when you think about it, like in Wiccan, especially
Oh
like
yeah.
Wiccan like beliefs, and like if you're practicing or not practicing, like you like leave an offering for them, and like you don't mess with it, and it's
Right.
like they're all powerful beings. Like they are powerful. Like you don't think of them as like these giant warlords. They're like tiny little things, but they're still all powerful, and they can fuck your life up.
Right.
Yeah.
They're supernatural and they'll steal your fucking kids. And this is what they
Exactly.
did. This is what they talked about about pagans. This is what they did to heathens.
Mhm.
This is what they did. So that's if I'm right, dare I say, if this is leading somewhere truthfully, then we have a lot of correction to kind of, I mean, if we're taking the truth movement seriously, if we're really trying to not just run in circles around this fucking mountain and actually get to the top, if we're trying to ascend, we gotta talk about things in a different light than we have over the past 60 years. Because I mean, JFK is still assassinated and the Nephilim are still a mystery, you know, but like we have more context to look through. And if our language is suggesting, you know, language that existed prior to the folklore, prior to the mythology, these words existed, that all these things alluded to humans, we have a much bigger problem on our hands than we thought.
We just
Oh,
have
yeah.
to stop lying to each other. That's what humans did. They lied.
But a lot of people are going to think I'm lying or that I'm falling for something. You know what I mean? Because they know the real truth, because they've had some experience where they've encountered some sort of intelligence. And I have too. I'm saying the brain that gets to sit here and talk about it does not get to accurately describe it. Because we always subjectively describe what we objectively experience in that other place, that psychedelic realm,
And
that
every
meditative
time you
place,
recall it, it's
that near-death
different.
place. Like
It's
near-death
even like describing a
experiences-
dream. You tell
Dude,
someone a
my-
dream that's super profound and they're like, that's
Well,
boring as fuck. It didn't happen to
Most
me.
memories aren't accurate, and most memories have a bias. Like whether it's like you're trying to remember a dream, a trip, or an actual event that happened to you, like traumatic or not, it's your memories are not accurate, and you're going to have
Also-
a different bias every time you think about it. It's going to confirm what you already believe.
Yes, because your brain is going to take a new experience
Mhm.
and always just use familiar sound,
Conform it to
visual,
kind of like
and-
what you know, like how
Yeah,
you think.
absolutely.
It's going to
and
try to
thought
make it make
And if it-
sense.
And think about this
Mhm,
angle.
exactly.
If it is really that foreign, like say a psychedelic experience,
Because
well, you're going to need someone to tell you what's what when you get back.
you have nothing to
Like,
compare it to. Like
Every fucking guru and author and
shaman.
Harvard scientist and academia educated guru that came out of the 60s and 70s, sponsored by the fucking CIA. All the people that that we all went right to when we came down from that trip because we had no reference for it.
Tim Leary, Terrence McKenna.
Oh, the aliens are in
I'm
your
gonna say Terrence
trips.
McKenna.
I'm telling you, all these subgroups are being converged and it's all being mixed together into a smorgasbord. And all these words are getting dumped into the same bucket. All these entity words and spirits and angels and demons. Fuck, the Box Saga says the word demon just means the moon. And
D Moon.
you can follow a trail that makes you understand why that makes sense and why it became what it did to the church and what demon, it's evil because the people of the moon, right? And
Like what you said
who's
with
the
this
people of the
convoluted
moon?
ball.
The women are the people of the moon, that their menstrual cycles follow the moon cycle. It's the downfall of the
lunar
divine
cycle.
feminine. So that's why it's a demon.
This convolution of all these terms and ideas is, what was the CIA guy, William something, that said our job will be complete when everything the people believe is a lie? I can't remember his
William
name.
Casey? I think
Casey?
it's-
Or is it
I
Bill
think so.
Casey? Something like that. But yeah, you can look up
Casey,
that.
I think, was the same guy that got pulled into the skiff when they were asking him, like, do you have agents working for news publications and shit like that? He's like, can I talk to you in private about it? You know?
There's your answer.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this amazing stuff. If you haven't checked out the Deep Share podcast yet, go do that now too, because he actually does research, unlike us, who just get on here and are like, oh yeah,
Boner.
yeah, that's funny. Oh, we're like
Boners are funny.
the idiocracy of podcasts. We're just like boners and balls. Yeah, and that's our show, and we're done now.
Well, it's
We
kind of
always
like
have
Box
great
Saga.
guests,
You know? You know, people doubt Box Saga. They're like, you're going to try to tell me there was like a dick cult? I'm like, look around at all the obelisks.
Have you looked on
There's
the
so
internet?
much phallic like symbology in
Everywhere.
every like old document, all old art, everything.
Every
Oh my-
building, skyscrapers, the
Every
Washington
building,
Monument. Come on.
Yeah, look up all the it's not just that. You've seen that one thing that everybody
Everywhere.
laughs at, like, somebody carved a dude sucking his own dick on that ceiling.
No, but it's
on that
like
cathedral. There's like
everywhere.
19 of those. They're all over the place. Like that shit's everywhere. Pagans were weird and they were real.
It's all
But-
wieners and balls.
Penis.
I will say that we would have to do this on a different episode perhaps, and it might be a little bit more controversial, but I can absolutely connect where the Box Saga takes humanity and where this holy war is today, and who's who and what's going on there.
Cool.
Stay tuned for round 2 then. Yes. Get something together. I want a PowerPoint presentation, slides, videos. Get the whole thing together, and then
Make
you
a
can just
prezi.
run the
Just
show.
make a prezi.
Yeah, just
All right,
do
cool,
it
man.
up. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We'll tether ourselves to our reality, but leave our minds open, and we'll jump into whatever you have to offer.
And we'll just watch
Hell,
and be
yeah.
amazed. Maybe I'll do
Listen,
mushrooms beforehand.
I am all about the spiritual experience, whatever anybody wants to call it, and getting into contact with God or whatever you'd call that feeling of connection. I'm all about it. I've had that experience, but we just have to stop letting our authority figures dictate what we call those, because those words we're using, I think we're stomping on graves, and I think we're going to bury them forever if we're not careful.
Very, very possibly. That's kind of our thing here in the West, especially, building shit on top of graves. Well, you guys, thank you so much. Shoot me any
Just
links
moving
you want.
just moving the headstones though. They
Yeah,
forgot to move the bodies, and we're gonna fuck with them.
They'll be fine. They're all dirt now anyway. Well, you guys shoot me any links you want in the show, Barb and Andy. I know most of your links, but if you have, your Telegram link and all that, and
Will do.
we'll put them in the notes. Thanks you guys so much. Thanks to the listeners. We'll see you again next week.